Phil, do you find that fans of your band, All That Remains, connect with some of the meanings of your songs and of your albums, like Fall of Ideals? Do people actually read that much into it? And do they talk to you about some of the responses that they feel about your music?
Sometimes, but sometimes they get the wrong impression, and I think that I'm probably not articulating it properly when I say the wrong impression, because I don't know that when you're dealing with art there is a right or a wrong impression, but they get a different impression than what my intent was. I've had people come up to me and say that they understood a song or a group of songs in a way that is entirely opposite to the way that I intended, and then they get very angry with me that I wasn't trying to say what they thought I was trying to say. But frequently people do they do take the meanings and get pretty close to the mark, I guess. I mean, I don't write a lot of abstract lyrics. They tend to be fairly clear if you'll take the time to read them. And there are times when I'm a little bit on the nose about certain things, and sometimes I leave a little more room for people to take away what they will. But I think that it's a good thing to allow people to understand things the way that or to have the impression that they do, and allow the listener to give meaning to the song. And that may be, because I look at it more like art than trying to drive my opinion to other people's,
Right.
it's
art. It's not propaganda. Heads. But the point is,
yeah, it is.
Yeah, but the point is also important that most of the stuff in our culture is pushing another message in the opposite direction. So I guess one thing I'm wondering, just hearing you talk about all this, is how wide is that disparity? How much are we behind on the cultural front, in our music, in our TV, in our television,
Decades.
Right? Like, is it just 95-5 in terms of the ideals that are embedded into this stuff?
Probably. Yeah, probably. It's bad. It's really, 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 really bad. Most music, at least, and as far as I can tell, most music and musicians are extremely, extremely left. Because I think that the default liberal or default Democrat is kind of where the average citizen is. I think that I mean, just today or just the other day, I saw a punk rock band is doing concerts that if you are vaccinated, you get in for $18, but if you're not vaccinated, it's $1,000. How can you call yourself punk rock when you're saying if you do what the government says, it's 18 bucks, but if you want to be an individual, it's $1,000. So poor individuals, beat it, get out of here. I can't see how that is in any way punk rock, but apparently that's what punk rock is today.
Yeah, I played in the punk scene for most of my early 20s and in college, and I would say the person with the least street cred among modern punks today is Johnny Rotten of the Sex Pistols, because he's the only person who still hates the government, no matter who it is. And young punks just think he's just some, I don't know, just like some weird macho punk. And it's just bizarre to me that like this is where we are. Where punks...
you look at, it used to be where people would make fun of Hot Topic and be like, oh, ha, 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 Hot Topic punks. But now that's every punk, because it's only a look. It's only a style. It's not an attitude. It's not really a lifestyle. It's literally, just a haircut and a T-shirt. It's entirely, something that's marketed.
Do you think metal is better than punk in terms of like its politics and the fans who gravitate towards it? Because just like anecdotally, I always felt like when I go to metal shows, I always feel like I am among more conservative people. But when I read metal review websites, I'm like, I'm not so sure anymore.
I think that there are a couple metal review websites, a couple of the blogs that are extremely far left. And I think that is because of the way that media is. You hear about the same thing with the video game media,
Oh, yeah.
very far left leaning. And I think that, and also at the New York Times. So I think really what it is, it's that relationship, or the relationships that people build when you live in Brooklyn and you work in New York. And so whether you're at the New York Times or Kotaku or the metal blogs that are in the metal world and stuff, a lot of those people, if they don't work side by side or freelance for multiple sites. I know that there's one person, I'm not going to say her name, but she freelances for Vox, and she's written for some of the metal blogs as well. And so it's a lot of the same people. So obviously they have a lot of the same politics. Now, I don't think that it's broadly the metal world. I think that once you get out into the actual people going to shows, it's not as much the left. But I think that when it comes to media, it does seem like that, because it's all the same people. And by all the same people, I mean it's the same culture, because they hang out together, they go to the bars together. They're the whole schmoozing side of it.
They're the cultural tastemakers, and what they say.
So how is
this, exactly.
Phil? How has this impacted your career, right? Because I follow you on Twitter, right? Nobody reading it can mistake where you're coming from on things, which is fun for me. But I'm saying, if you're navigating the music industry, the media, the critics, the executives, how has that been for you to be so vocally going against the crowd? Has it adversely impacted you?
They hate me, like absolutely. There have been people from metal blogs that have gone out of their way to tweet at my label to try and get us dropped. They will not put my name in print without being critical. They're even when I will say things that they agree with, they'll be like, well, we kind of agree with this, but this is why we still hate him. And they detest me, absolutely detest me.
Yeah, it's like anytime you get like a review of an album, and they'll be like, the band All That Remains has a new album. You might know them from this controversy, and not
from this thing that guy tweeted.
They're 2 decades of albums they've been putting out. It's bizarre. It's truly bizarre to me. I want to pivot real quick though back towards what we were talking about before we wrap up, because we could reorder the entire country under, like a new Article 5 convention. We could reorder our rights. We could decide what kind of country we want to have under new terms. But I feel like one thing will always remain the same, which is big tech companies are never going to be reined in by this kind of stuff. You're still going to have the rules of the road determined for discourse, for trade, for commerce by Facebook, by Amazon, by Twitter. They're still going to be setting the rules. And I worry about that a lot. Phil, do you share that concern?
I do. I don't know what the right answer is, because I'm extremely libertarian when it comes to, almost everything. I'm borderline anarchist when it comes to the way that I think that any type of government organization or any type of government should be. Well, the government's bad at things and stuff. And you can just it can be the government's bad at things and stuff, period. You can leave it like that. But so I don't know what the answer is. But I am sympathetic to the argument that a lot of conservatives make when they say, look, libertarians, you're going to sit there and say that they need to be, you can't have the government get involved, and then they're going to entirely snuff out your ideology through propaganda. So I am sympathetic to that. I don't think that having the government get involved is a good thing, but I also don't think that there's a good answer, because and Brad, you can probably speak to this. There's no limit to the amount of influence that algorithms can have on a population. People don't make up their minds on their own as much as they think they do.
Yeah.
It's crazy how much power big tech has and will have. But the problem is, you look at the proposed solutions, right? And whether it's the extremists saying nationalize big tech, or just the kind of conservatives saying repeal Section 230. Either way, when you look at the details, it will empower the government. If I don't want Jack Dorsey dictating speech, I certainly don't want Elizabeth Warren or Kamala Harris. And I just don't really see a way out of it. And that's something that maybe you have thoughts on, but I had to explain this to somebody. I was having a conversation with a friend, right? Not political, not a partisan guy, doesn't work, just visiting us. And we were talking about a problem, and I was pointing out the flaws in the progressive solution. He was saying, and I just said, maybe the government can't fix this. And he just couldn't accept that answer, that there's not a collective solution to every problem that faces us. How often do you run into that?
Frequently. I feel like when you're talking to people that are of an extremely progressive mindset, I feel like I'm talking to a person that is very, very religious. I feel like I'm talking to someone that really, really, really believes in God and really, really loves their God. So the idea, the concept of maybe maybe the government can't do this is like telling someone that believes in God, maybe God can't fix this problem. The reaction is the same. So I don't know, and I don't know what you do about that, because I mean, I don't know if you've ever talked to someone that's really religious and been like, maybe God isn't real, and then that just draws a wall there. You're not getting through that one, But Brad, you mentioned 230. I'm interested to hear your opinion about the way that telecommunication companies are. So you can't AT&T can't say this person said something on a conversation, and so we're going to kick them off the phone service. Can you conceptualize a way to make sure that the social media companies or Google or whatever treats people the way that phone companies are required to treat people? Is there something that you could bring to the table that could help to produce that result?
Right. I mean, they've talked about common carrier laws, and that would be outside of Section 230 being applied to big tech. The problem is that I don't know a ton about it. Some people are debating it. It's kind of in the early stages of an idea. I worry it would put us down the fairness doctrine path, right? When media was forced to present both sides and air them equally. Yeah. And then it's like, well, ultimately at the end of the day, with something like phone service, right? It's pretty easy for even the government to not mess up inspecting something like that. But then fairness, right? Were you to regulate fairness or bias neutrality onto a tech platform, who's going to decide what that is? FCC bureaucrats? Because I know the people that work in Washington and the deep state, right? You want to call it a dramatic term, right? But it is an entrenched bureaucracy of progressive-leaning people. They view some ideas as violence, some speech as dangerous, right? So they're of the same pool of the people that run the big tech. So I ultimately don't think you get very different outcomes.
Yeah, I grew up. Go ahead, Phil. Sorry.
Well, I understand what you're saying about fairness doctrine. I do wish that, and this is more a wish than thinking about an actual working solution. But I do wish that, the big tech companies or whatever were more comfortable saying, well, look, people can say whatever they want as long as it's not actually inciting or threatening. Then it's the reader's job to block and to ignore, things that they don't like to hear or whatever. But I don't know that, I think that I'm in the same boat with you, Brad. I don't know that there is a good solution.
Look, I completely agree. I wish they would embrace that approach. The problem more so isn't the tech companies per se, because they're more, they're basically taking the temperature of the room and then going where they think they have to, because if they don't, the mob will come for them, right? So there is this underlying mob of media critics, of journalists, of activists, of professors, of the kind of people that occupy Twitter, right? Demanding that they censor, demanding that they fact check.
And it's a vocal minority too.
But that minority will boycott them, will protest them, will get them canceled. Where people on the right will do that sometimes on some social issues, right? But there's just not the same platform, and then most Americans are just disengaged from the stuff. So then you get the outcome dictated by the furthest extreme subpopulation.
The reason that I am libertarian today, and I grew up conservative and I made the change over a course of several years, is because I have come to embrace exactly what you both are talking about, which is there is not a solution to every single problem, and sometimes the medicine is worse than the sickness. And that, I think, is a good place to leave it, y'all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.